Hey guys, welcome back to the House of Gouldians. So in today's episode we've got three parts. Part one, we're going to catch up with George and Elizabeth and Odo and Josephine, as well as Odo and Josephine's chicks, and see how they're getting through the molt. Part two, my club has their Bloodline Show, so we're going to look at some of the birds that were on show and the winners. And then the final part of the episode today is about the upcoming austerity period. So yeah, if you don't know what that is, stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy the show. Right, so in terms of the majestic bloodlines, I thought we'd have a quick catch up with George and Elizabeth, which you saw in episode 1. So if you have a look at George over here, you'll see that he's starting to lose some of his chest feathers. He's looking quite patchy around the front end. He's also lost some of his wing feathers, and you'll notice that his tail's missing. So this is sort of typical signs of a bird going into molt, and at this stage he's looking quite healthy otherwise. So yeah, I'm quite happy with sort of where he is in the process. In terms of Elizabeth, you'll see she's also well, she's not looking half as scruffy as he is. She's actually almost towards the end of it. So yeah, she went into molt a lot sooner than he did, but she's almost at the end of it. So yeah, she's also doing quite well. She's not showing any sort of signs of stress or that. She does occasionally drop her wings in that, but nothing that I'm concerned about at this point. So they're doing great. And then from Odo and Josephine's perspective, so if we have a look at Odo over here, you'll see he's been separated out with a bunch of other birds that are also in a sort of similar position in the molt, and he's also, you'll see he's lost a lot of chest feathers, and that's why he's looking quite patchy, and he's very much lost a lot of flight feathers and that kind of thing. So he's actually battles to fly a little bit at the moment, but that's nothing to be concerned about. It's normal for birds that are busy going through the molt. Josephine, on the other hand, yeah, she hasn't really started the molt that much. She's got the odd feather missing, but she's not deep in it like some of the others are. So yeah, I'm quite happy with the sort of current state of affairs with the birds that you've been introduced to. In terms of the chicks, so at least in episode 3, we discussed how to get your birds through the molt. And you'll see here's a classic example of that sort of those tips or plans in action. So we've put them in a low density situation. So I've removed a lot of the birds out of the cage. We've only got the 3 cock chicks. So I've separated sexes as well, left in the cage. You'll notice that the stress perch has been added. We've put in, we made sure obviously that they've got the access to the grit that we discussed, and the high sort of nutritional seed, and they're also getting small amounts of protein, and so you'll see that in the finger feeder on the end there. And then we've put the vitamins in the water. So we're making sure that they're getting everything that they could possibly need to help get them through that sort of colouring up stage, and that. And you'll see that the colours already started coming through on the breast and belly area, and that's why we could tell that they were 3 cocks, because of the dark purple, whereas the hen would be a light purple that's coming through, and the one did colour up or started colouring up as a hen, so she's been separated into a cage with hens. So that's typical of where it starts with the colouring up process. So you know, you can tell quite early which sex the bird's going to be, and then divide them up accordingly to get your low densities. So yeah, so that's the sort of majestic bloodline side. Now let's have a look at some of the show footage. So welcome to the Bloodline Show for 2021. This is a show hosted by the Gouldian Finch Collective in South Africa. It's a club show, and it was a closed show this year purely because of COVID. In terms of the major awards, so it's the normal sort of first, second and third, as well as the best opposite sex, and then it goes on to the 3 best from each breast colour, as well as in the different back colours. So yeah, looking at the birds themselves, you can see the sort of normal section. This is always a sort of a fairly big class. So we've got the black-headed purple-breasted greenbacks, and then the red-headed purple-breasted greenbacks, and then obviously the section of the best wild type or normal would then finish with your orange-headed purple-breasted. And the hens and cocks would then compete for that major award in terms of the best normal on show. There's just some of the hens that were on show. And then I wanted to show you the matched pairs. It's always an interesting category where the guys have to try and match up not only from a type perspective but from a color perspective, a hen and a cock bird. So it's always a nice category, although it's never typically very big. There you can see two of the yellow rumps. That's a new mutation that started in South Africa. I'll show you one in more detail a little bit later. In terms of the yellow birds on show, we had a really nice big class, which I was really happy to see all the single factor and double factor yellows. And both the cocks and the hens were very well represented. We had virtually all the combinations you could think of. There's another yellow rump. The birds weren't quite in order because I wasn't following the numbers when I was filming. I was kind of going down the rows and then back the opposite way. So yeah, I apologize for them not being all together in their classes, if you like. But yeah, so there's some of the nice purple-breasted single factor yellows. There's an orange head there, and then you can see some more of the hens, the white breasts, and moving into sort of more of your normal hens. Like I said, things weren't really in order, but you can see there's some nice examples, some good typed birds or model birds, and then also the sort of colouring of some of the hens was nice. They were in good condition considering that it was very early in the show season to be having a show, but we did that to sort of coincide with the guys entering the international show. That bird had some interesting sort of different colours in it, which you wouldn't normally see in a yellow, so that was entered in as an AOC or any other colour. And then you'll see that there's also one of the examples of the yellow rump in a hen. So that's that bird that's sort of hopping around on the floor. There she is there. But once again, I'll show you more detail. So looking at the yellow rump mutation specifically, you can see a couple of the key features with this, which is typical to the mutation. So the purple collar around the back of the neck, and then also you'll notice on the wings there's that edging on the green feathers. So that's typical, and then obviously the yellow rump itself, which changes the wild type from blue to yellow. So those sort of three aspects of the bird you'll typically find in the yellow rump mutation, although not all of them have the collar and the etching in the wings, and you can see that in this hen. So you'll notice that okay, hens don't normally have the collar, so the purple's not really noticeable. But you'll also see on the wings that the edging is minimal. You don't have that extreme edging like that cock bird had. Then this bird I thought was also worth sort of highlighting, just the sheer quality of the colouring on the bird. So the white's that pure white, and you'll see when we show you the winning birds, she actually took the best white-breasted bird on show, and the yellow on that bird was also very clean. In this bird, I thought was also worth a mention because of just the brilliant condition he was in on the day. He didn't have a feather out of place. He was absolutely magnificent. The tail was also quite long on this bird, perhaps slightly longer than the show standard would indicate, but it just made him look totally magnificent. The length of the tail also sort of made him a little bit more elongated in appearance than he actually was. But yeah, a very, very nice bird. Here you can see some of the major winners. So yeah, you'll see there's that hen that I was telling you had won the best white breast on show, and deservedly so. She was an extremely nice bird. So moving on to the main winners, there you can see that red-headed normal that took the best normal as well as the overall winner of the show. And then the bird on the left hand side, she was a yellow rump hen. She took the best yellow rump bird on show as well as the best opposite sex, and then obviously second place as well. And then the bird on the right, that young lady took the reserve runner-up as well as the best yellow series bird on show. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. The purpose of the austerity period is to try and mimic what happens in the wild. So in the wild, there would be a part of the year or time of the year where the nutrition available to the bird is at an all-time low. And that's because typically the dry season's coming to an end, but the rains haven't come yet, and the grasses haven't started seeding again with the rains. So the birds have eaten all the best seeding while it was sort of available to them, and they ignored the low nutritional stuff. But now they're kind of having to revisit what's available to them and look at that and eat the sort of less nutritional stuff. So in captivity, we mimic that. So typically during the molt, we said that we're trying to make sure they've got as much nutritional value as they can get. But once they're through the molt, we'll then change out the seed to red manna, and a lot of the breeders use a small amount of white millet as well. There's some guys that argue against using the white millet. Traditionally, I was one of those. I only use red manna, but I've found that perhaps it's a little bit harsh as my birds are coming into condition later in the season compared to other breeders. And I've put that down to that perhaps the red manna only is a little bit too harsh. And it's taking them a lot longer to sort of recover from that sort of drought period, if you like, in terms of availability of nutrition. Now, that's what we do in terms of changing to red manna, but why do we do it? So, austerity period is about trimming the excess weight of the bird. So we know as bird keepers that if a bird is obese, it tends to affect the fertility of the bird. So you don't want your birds going into the breeding season with excess weight because it will then affect the number of fertile eggs. So we want to trim that off, and the austerity is the way to do that. The other benefit of doing the austerity period is that you can use it to make sure that both your hen and your cock birds have dropped out of condition completely, and their hormone levels in terms of breeding are sort of lowered. And then once you're through the austerity period, you then start feeding the birds up for breeding season. And this way, your hen and your cock, in terms of the breeding sort of hormones, if you like, are synchronized, and they come into condition at the same time. And this helps to avoid a lot of issues. So a lot of breeders will have scenarios where their cocks are ready to breed, but perhaps the hens aren't. So what would then happen is that the hens might go and drop a single egg, and then nothing happens for a week, and then they'll drop another egg or two, and they're just not ready to breed, but the cocks are pushing them to breed. So it's those kind of things that typically go wrong if your birds don't come into condition at the same time. And that's, in a nutshell, why we do the austerity period. So yeah, basically it's a preparation for your breeding season. I hope that's been helpful and it's made some sense to you. And yeah, give it a try if you haven't tried before, and see what happens.